What is going on, fans of Avatar: The Last Airbender? The time has officially come, ladies and gentlemen. I just finished the finale for Avatar: The Last Airbender on Netflix, and so right now feels like as good a time as any to break down Episode 7 and Episode 8. Episode 7 is titled The North, and Episode 8 is titled Legends. And there really is a lot to talk about here, so I'm not going to waste any time. Before we dive in, make sure you smash like and subscribe if you're new here, because if you don't, you'll feel the heat. A little firebending. I haven't done a firebending pun in a little while, a little firebending pun. But honestly, Episode 7 might be a little bit quicker just going through it compared to Episode 8, because Episode 8 is the finale. But to start with Episode 7, The North, I just right off the top want to say that I enjoyed this episode, but it also very much felt like a filler episode getting towards the finale. It's that calm before the storm, you know what I mean? Obviously, Aang and the gang are arriving at the Northern Water Tribe. That's super exciting, and something that I wanted to touch on immediately is just the look of the Northern Water Tribe. like when they're flying in on APPA, the look of this place is outrageous. Like, the amount of CGI and just effects that they put into at least just the landscapes and the scenery in this show, it's kind of bewildering at times. But then they show up and everything becomes practical and we start getting introduced to characters. And when it comes to Episode 7 and 8, these are two of the most closely adapted episodes in the entire series. There's really not much branching out going on from the main plot line. There's honestly just things that were omitted, things that were left out. But with that being said, watching this episode is kind of a trip, man. Like, it's literally like you're just watching the cartoon, but in live action, all the way down to the battle between Katara and Pakku, which I'll get to, but everything from them showing up and being greeted by this kind of party of the Northern Water Tribe and being welcomed in, and then they have a big feast and a gathering to welcome Sokka and Aang and Katara, and it was really nice to see Katara and Sokka feel welcomed. That's something that's a part of the original that just kind of makes you feel good. You know, they've been away from home for so long, and so they're getting back to at least a water tribe, something that's familiar to them. But then you have Sokka and Princess Yue. Princess Yue being played by Amber Midthunder, and this was a performance that I've been very, very much looking forward to seeing. I heard that she was cast a long time ago. It was actually right around the time that I had watched Prey, the movie, and that was kind of like one of her big debuts as an actress. And just to comment on her performance as Yue, just in general, I think she did a great job. Again, with how closely they adapted these episodes, it's pretty much by the book, so it almost felt like there wasn't a lot of room for getting creative here. Everybody just kind of stuck to the exact structure of what was going on, and a lot of the lines were word for word in this episode as well as in Episode 8. So we knew what was coming, but I was very curious to see Sokka and Yue and to see that relationship blossom, and I think that they did a phenomenal job. I really did. I got their chemistry. I bought them being together. While watching, I was kind of commenting on her costume and just like the wig. I thought hair-wise, it could have been done a little bit differently. I don't know. When you're looking at her, it's just kind of like, well, that is clearly a wig probably, but there was also a short scene between Aang and Katara at the feast that definitely stuck out to me. You know, within this first season, we haven't seen a lot of those moments, at least in the original series, where there are those hints at some sort of love that could potentially blossom, and I completely understand that these are just children, and so it might be kind of hard to reference that and get that going, especially with Gordon actually being so young. But I would imagine in Book 2, at least I'm hoping in Book 2 or Season 2, however they're going to go about this, I'm very much hoping for that relationship start to really go somewhere, and for us to at least start to see just the makings of what's going to come in the future. You know what I mean? Let me know what you guys think about that. Just up until Episode 7, and as I was watching Episode 7, those were kind of the thoughts that I had got, and seeing them interact at this feast, it made me very happy, because I was like, okay, sweet, like we're starting to get somewhere. And I'll talk a little bit more about the finale and some of the stuff that happens there, but a lot of this episode and a lot of this Northern Water Tribe, as you guys know, will have to do with Katara. With Aang not learning waterbending, it's all pretty much Katara. It's all circling around her. And I really, really dug this performance and the way that they went about this entire thing, especially with Pakku not accepting women as warriors in the tribe. There was a lot of talk before the show came out saying that they were just like completely erasing all of that stuff, and I never put much stock into it because clickbait articles just make people angry, and that's exactly what they're for. I figured they're still had to be some sort of element, no pun, element of this within these final episodes, and there certainly was. And Katara takes it in stride, and she challenges Pakku, and we have this fight that very much mimicked the original fight, but it was so freaking dope to see this in live action, especially when she freezes that little tower and she's shooting the discs and one of them flies by his face just like it did in the cartoon. I was like, let's go, dude. But another thing to note is Katara learns a little bit about healing and the healing properties there. She is a gifted healer, as we'll see in the future, and so that's just kind of a small little Easter egg, knowing where we're going with her, that I know we're going to end up seeing, and so I just really like to see that. But then we had a whole scene that took me by surprise. This scene with Aang and Avatar Kuruk. I spoke a little bit in my review of episode 6 about my feelings on Aang's interaction with Avatar Roku. It's funny because the interaction that Aang has with Avatar Kuruk is kind of more along the lines of what I was looking for. This interaction was really stellar to me. I didn't even expect to see this Avatar. This isn't somebody that we see in the original series at this point, but with Aang meeting Kyoshi and then Roku and now Kuruk, I really liked that essence of this live action adaptation, kind of having Aang connect the dots with these other avatars, and the discussion with Kuruk and the outfit that he's wearing, this giant polar bear head on top of his. It was just so badass. I loved this actor, whoever this guy was, but he felt like an avatar, and Kyoshi definitely felt like an avatar, and it's good to see how much they included in this series for the learning and the growth of Aang. This series does have a very serious tone, and I think it does a good job at making you feel how important these things are and making you realize that there are stakes. But like I said, this is probably the only episode in the entire season that felt like filler to me. There was just a lot of exposition getting set up for the epic finale. You had Sokka talking with Yue, her revealing that she's attached to the moon spirit. You had Katara learning and growing through waterbending, hinting at the fact that she is now a waterbending master. You have Aang kind of completing his mission of talking to all of the avatars before this final culmination event. And then as far as the Fire Nation stuff goes, you have Zhao plotting to kill Zuko and blowing up his boat, but Zuko gets away, and you have all of that kind of behind the back stuff. And then you have the new added stuff with Azula and Ozai. And even talking about this episode and calling it filler, it probably still had the coolest part of this entire series, with Azula bringing in the lightning, the unlimited power, and shooting that and demonstrating that for Ozai. And Ozai's like, oh shit. I thought that was great. It was a little subtle nod at the end of book 1 with, you know, the setup of Azula and how big of a character she's going to be in the second season. And so that was really exciting. But I love the way that everybody came together in the end. Sokka and Katara supporting Aang, and Aang looking up and saying it's time to fight. I personally was feeling the vibe. I really was. I was like, all right, let's do this. And so then heading into the finale, we have a finale title, Legends. But when we're thinking about the adaptation side of this, and we have the original series and we're comparing it to this, and what are they going to pluck out of the original series and put into this, and what are they going to change, I really liked what they did with this episode. The very first thing that they show is Aang and team actually going after Fire Nation ship. So we just start in the thick of things, starting this battle off. And in the original series, it's just Aang. Aang goes and annihilates this ship, and then he gets on Appa and he looks out and he sees thousands of ships, and he's like, oh no, like I'm not gonna be able to do this that many times. But in this, they incorporated everybody, and I loved Katara landing, doing some waterbending. Aang looked amazing, and then Sokka going in, beating this whole control panel, and then getting blown out the window, but catching and hanging on Appa. There were a lot of little shots within that sequence that reminded me so much of the original series. Just that kind of over-the-top, unrealistic, like there's no way he would survive that, you know? He would fall off of Appa so easily, but that's the spirit of Avatar and this group, just unafraid and not backing down. It was so cool, and it also was a little shining moment for Appa, which there were far too few in this season, and I'll talk more about this. Also, what happened to my boy Momo? I don't even know what's going on anymore. But we had a nice touching moment between Iroh and Zuko's basically doing exactly what we knew he was going to do. He's going to jump in the water, and he's going to go try to sneak in there and capture the Avatar before Zhao. And Zhao, on the other side of things, has his own separate plan. He actually has a war balloon, and I'm happy that they brought this into this because it's a small little tie-in to the Mechanists creating those, and I thought that was a fun little Easter Easter egg, to be honest. But we also get some nice depth as far as what Zhao went through and the plan that he has in mind. And you know, the character of Zhao just in general throughout this entire season, for me at least, I don't know how you guys are feeling, but he has been so up and down. One episode, I'm like, okay, I'm into this performance, I'm into this character. The next episode, I'm like, oh man, I don't know. Like, is this Zhao or who is this? But it is its own series. This is a different take on the character, and I think I got used to it in the end, especially with this finale. I really enjoyed where they took him and where Ken Luong kind of just went with the character. He remained this very dead set, kind of inexperienced but headstrong dude that's just trying to do anything he can. He'll stab anybody in the back to get power. And he finds out through the fire sages that the moon spirit and the ocean spirit come alive during one night of the year. And that's a little bit of a change because I believe in the original series, they're always just in there and they're always just alive. But there was also a moment very early on in this episode with Katara where she is kind of solidified as a master. Somebody calls her Master Katara and she's like, wait a minute, I'm not a master. And then she kind of looks off and she's like, well, actually, maybe I am. And if this was anybody's episode, to be honest, it was Kiawentiio. I was actually saying this shortly after I watched it. I feel like it may have taken the whole season for me to finally go, okay, that's Katara. But in the end, I looked at this actress, I looked at that character, and I was like, yeah, that's the heart of Katara. Like, that's what I've wanted to feel this entire time, and I'm happy that this finale at least took it there. I loved the fight between her and Zuko. That was so cool. When the battle starts again with these landscapes and these massive CGI moments where you're just like, good God, these big fire catapults firing on the Northern Water Tribe. I'm sure people can complain about a lot of stuff in this show, but I don't think that stuff is one of them. It felt real, it felt tense, and it felt like I was kind of right in the middle of the action. As for the characters that we were watching on the waterbending side, I actually was having a bit of a hard time connecting to any of them. You know, there was the one actor, Han, and he was so like, just like a nice, honest guy. And in the cartoon, this is one of those things I had a hard time a little bit with the adaptation again, because Han is that character that's like kind of a doofus, kind of an idiot. He's the guy that Admiral Zhao and Iroh are having a conversation on the ship, and he surprises them and takes off his helmet, and he's like, Admiral Zhao, prepare to meet your fate. And he runs at Admiral Zhao, and Admiral Zhao just like moves to the side and kicks him off the bow, and he dies, and you're like, oh dang. So they gave him a bit more of an honorable role in this, and you know, you see and you kind of figure out as you watch this entire series that, you know, the humor just isn't nearly as prevalent, and I think I accepted that pretty early on. It actually seems like a lot of people didn't accept that, and that's something that a lot of people wanted, but I'm fine with it as long as they continue to kind of amp it up as we go along, because who knows, this show could go 5 seasons. I'm going to have a long conversation about that after I do these reviews, and I'm going to be making some more content regarding that, but I do have a feeling that this show is going to be going a lot longer, and so I think after this first season, the creators are probably going to take a look at some of the things that worked and some of the things that didn't work, and I think the lack of humor is a bit of a detriment at times, because I would have loved to see Han actually do that and be like, Admiral Zhao, and like do that whole thing. That would have been phenomenal, and I think it can work in this show. But anyway, you know, this is a very serious finale, and we have Aang battling so much emotion, and Kuruk pops up again, Avatar Kuruk, right in the middle of the battle. I found that pretty interesting. I mainly was just waiting until we got to the Spirit Oasis stuff and getting to Zuko, and I just wanted to see how they played all that out. I really wasn't sure if they were going to do the Zuko versus Katara and Aang going into the spirit world and being trapped there and Zuko capturing Aang, all that stuff. They didn't end up doing that, and you quickly realize like, oh yeah, well they already brought in Ko, we already saw all of that. There wouldn't necessarily be a reason for him to go into the spirit world at this point. So the way that they played things was pretty quick and to the point, but I felt like the emotion, for me at least, landed in the points where it needed to land. Oh yeah, I forgot about something really important though, and something that I needed to address, because this is something really serious that everybody needs to know about right now. What are you doing with Momo? This is a direct conversation to the creators I'm having right here. What are you doing crushing Momo under a boulder? That little cute guy does not deserve to be underneath a boulder. You trying to What are you guys trying to do, man? Oh, man. Sorry, guys. Just a little rant over. Luckily, they heal Momo, and that was a very touching scene between Momo and Sokka. I was like, oh my gosh, that actually brought tears to my eyes because I was like, what are we doing? Why are you killing Momo? Like, what is happening right now? But kind of step for step in the end, there was a subtle change when it came to Tui and La and Yin and Yang. Aang goes into the Avatar state. I will say the music was incredible when he did that. I got very similar chills in that moment compared to when I watched the original series, but with Aang in the Avatar state, he is acting as the ocean spirit, and the ocean spirit's not going to come back because the ocean spirit will eternally now be looking for the moon spirit because Zhao killed the moon spirit. Then it really heads into, you know, the sequence that I was curious if they were even going to do. They kill the moon and everything goes red, and then everything goes black and white, and just the look and feel of this entire point in the episode was so much fun. I loved it. Aang turning into Koizilla and being in the middle of it and bending, and Zuko looking up and tapping Iroh and being like, Uncle, what is that? What Koizilla does is pretty incredible. The effects were fantastic. You can tell they dumped a ton of money into these special effects, and you can't watch it and be like, oh, that doesn't look good, because it looks incredible. It was outrageous. Him knocking all these ships over. We see a lot of people actually like dying. You're like, whoa, man. And then we start getting to what I'll call the emotionally effective moments of this episode. I'm going to start with Zuko versus Zhao and the rage that ensues with Zuko, the acting, the choreography, the martial arts that takes place in this small little battle. I was so into it. And then Zhao really egging Zuko on in the end, being like, who do you think my contact was? Who do you think's on the inside? Your dad doesn't want you to come home. You think he ever intended for you to come home? Just that clarity of the situation that's starting to come forth in Zuko's mind. We're starting to see that turn, one of the most beautiful turns in character history for me. I absolutely love it. But I love that it's Zhao right here telling this to Zuko, and watching that performance in Dallas Liu's eyes, like watching him have these realizations in real time. It was freaking beautiful. And I also loved how Iroh just kills Zhao. He falls and lands in the water just like the original. So cool. But then the next emotionally effective moment was Sokka and Yue. I'm not gonna lie, it ended up getting me. She goes into the pond. We all know what's about to happen, and she's gonna transfer her life force and become the moon and all of that stuff. But I thought Ian Ousley's performance here was pretty great. Obviously, they have like this kind of last kiss. The one thing I didn't know if they were gonna do is like show like her spirit ghost come out, and they didn't do that. Unfortunately, I was kind of looking forward to that, but that's all right, you know. I thought they handled Sokka and Princess Yue fairly well, and now we can just get on with Sokka and Suki. But the moment that finally got me, and this comes full circle with what I was talking about with Katara, when I realized like, oh yeah, this is Katara. She's talking to Aang, and there's this sweet moment when Aang is still in this ocean spirit rage, and she's talking to him, and she's like, the world needs you. I need you. That moment right there gave me chills. It made me well up. That was the moment that I needed from this finale, because that's what I want to see. Aang and Katara means so much to me. It means so much to the fandom. These two are the two that come together, you know? And I hope the creators look at this show and they're able to see these sentimental moments, the moments that really hit with the fandom, and they do more of that, and they start to capture that heart and the essence of Avatar: The Last Airbender, because I think that they did a good job with this series. But what I'm looking for is just a lot of moments like that, you know, a lot of moments that kind of punch you in the gut where you're like, man. But yeah, you know, they save the day. Katara has a nice little moment with Master Pakku. I wasn't sure if he was going to mention anything about the necklace. He never did. It looks like they just kind of threw that little bit out. But then we also have Iroh and Zuko leaving on that boat, and Zuko is just as confused as ever. It's like, where do you want to go? And he's like, I don't know. I'm tired. That's the setup for one of the greatest episodes of all time in Avatar: The Last Airbender, Zuko alone. Like, this is the setup right now for moments like that, and I can't wait till we get those moments in live action. It's going to be really, really cool. But Aang has a very beautiful moment as well, something that this entire season was leading toward. Him realizing that he needs to stop thinking about the past and dwelling and living in the past and start living for his future. It makes the character and Gordon's performance especially all make sense in that one moment. This entire season was about Aang just dwelling on the past, just living in the past, feeling nothing but sadness and regret for not being there, and everybody that he knew dying, Gyatso dying, like losing everybody and not being able to be there for him. You could tell it just ate him up this entire time. And it's something that in the original series really isn't addressed that much. Aang is just very kind of happy-go-lucky. He feels those raw emotions, and those emotions come out in several different moments, and they come out when they need to, but they very, very much were trying to tap into that darker side, that emotional side of Aang in this season, and I can definitely respect that, and I think that in the end, it definitely worked for me. But all the characters in the end, it was really great to see. Katara, Sokka, and Aang, just that little send-off for them, and then we get to the Fire Nation stuff. We get this little scene from Ozai saying that he expected this loss. He's talking to one of the Fire Sages, and they're like, Zuko may have died, you know, he was up there, and Ozai's like, I don't care. If he died, he was weak, and if he survived, he's strong. And he basically says that it was all just a distraction anyway, and he sent somebody up to Omashu, and they show Azula wearing this badass helmet. I was like, what? What are we even doing? Azula wearing a helmet? It was pretty cool, and she's leading this whole battalion, and they took Omashu. I found that really good, really great setup for season 2, and then they also have a small little post-credit scene referencing, finally, Sozin's comment. There's no time frame given. It's just kind of, it's coming soon. Very much like a winter is coming, Game of Thrones type thing. And it's like, it could be 6 months, could be 35 years. We have no idea. But I found that little post-credit really exciting. I'm happy that they went there and they showed that there is a limited amount of time and Aang does need to learn these elements quickly, especially waterbending. But that honestly about wraps it up for the finale. I really, really enjoyed this finale. I thought that it did what it needed to do as the culmination to this season, which was, if I dare say, a very successful season. I thought season 1 was a lot of fun and done very, very well. I do, however, have a ton of different thoughts just regarding the series as a whole. I've been going through this thing episode by episode and breaking it down kind of piece by piece, but keep up with my channel because I'm going to have loads of content coming out. I'm going to do a full series review. I'm going to do some episode rankings. I have a lot of different ideas, so keep an eye out, and as always, please let me know your thoughts down below. Comment what you thought about episode 7 as well as the finale. Did you enjoy this finale as much as I did? Was it not for you? Did you enjoy it way more than I did? Did you see anything that I might not have caught? Any fun Easter eggs that we should know about? Please let me know down below. I love reading your guys' comments. Also, make sure you smash like on this video. I'd really appreciate that. Subscribe if you're new here. You can follow me on X at JonesVibesOnly, and don't forget to keep up the good vibes, guys. But that's it for Avatar: The Last Airbender on Netflix. Conclusion: we needed more Appa and Momo.
Jones Vibes.